to my madness. So I'm going to play this video, and it is a little long, but it really encapsulates the vision of where transition services planning is going. And by the way, I am not wearing my mask. I saw Stephanie just take hers off because I am in this room all by myself, and so I don't need to wear one because I'm socially distancing. I wanted to be a good role model though, so I wanted to tell you that all. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna watch this video, and if you, I'm gonna click the button. If you don't see it start right away, let me know. Stephanie, do you see it?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm on mute. I can't find myself to unmute myself. Where am I?
Is there supposed to be sound?
There's no sound. Dr. Mack, if you could go on your menu and put computer sound, click computer sound so we can hear the video.
Oh, okay. What do I do?
The three dots, I think there should be a menu and it says computer sound, and you check it. I think that's right. If somebody has clearer directions, they can tell her.
Don't you have to exit out
Share
of
computer sound.
You may have to exit out of share screen before you find that option.
Yeah, you have to stop, and when you share the screen, there'll be an option to put sound in at the bottom left.
Okay.
Thanks, Garcia.
So it says right now that I'm sharing my computer sound. So let's see if that works. What's the okay, let's go ahead. Try this.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people with disabilities that have people making their decisions. And that's not really necessary for them. If they'd just known what they needed to know when they were younger and been more prepared, everything could have been much different.
A lot of times what we do is we do so much for students that we forget that when school's over, they're going to have to speak for themselves. So students that have experience in doing that are going to be much more successful than students that aren't. A student-directed IEP is where the student is involved in the development of their IEP and as well as being involved in the meeting, the actual meeting itself. Unfortunately, a lot of times I think in education we believe that inviting the student to the meeting is enough, because what happens in most cases is the student comes to the meeting and he or she is there but really doesn't understand what's going on. And, you know, for those of us who've been at a lot of IEP meetings, it can be a pretty intimidating meeting, particularly for a student that's coming in and there might be, 10, 15, or sometimes more professionals around the table, and everyone's talking about the student, what Beth can do, what Beth can't do, that kind of thing. And we're kind of talking around the student or about the student without really involving that student. So a student-directed IEP is one where the student is involved from the beginning in the development of their IEP and then in the meeting itself. We do have to look at each case individually and have that conversation with the student and that student's family prior to the development of it, so that their input is there. And again, going back to transition, that IEP should facilitate that transition, particularly when we're talking about from 16 on up. The IEP is the transition plan. It's, all right, what is it this student is thinking about doing after high school, and what can we do now to help that student start moving toward those goals?
I have autism. I think differently. My hearing is sensitive, as are my sense of smell and taste. I hear music in my head that interferes with my work. The IEP helps me get through my work. I make a list of classes I would like to take. I write and give a speech of what kind of year I had, good and bad. the activities I participated and subjects I would like to take next year. And this year, my sisters helped me make a DVD of the people that worked with me this year. I like to draw, I like to sing, tell jokes, I collect action figures, I'm writing a script for my American anime movie, and I like thrill rides. I would like to go to college and learn about animated movie making. It is my right to tell the art community what I need and want.
Hi, I'm Tom. Welcome to my IEP meeting.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Tom. What were some things that you worked on this year, Tom?
What I worked on?
Yeah, in school.
Well, I worked on English, some algebra, computer applications,
And U.S. history?
U.S. history, and life.
Right now he has 20 and a half credits. The English class.
Okay.
That's the only, of course, then he's got to earn another half credit, credit and a half someplace.
The way that I feel that it has helped Tom to participate in his IEP is that he takes ownership of it. He's in there and he hears everything that is being said, but I felt that it was very important that he be in there and he have a say. So before we go into the meetings, we start about 2 or 3 months ahead of time. Tom, what do you want to take next year? And we start in there, I want this, and of course sometimes the list changes. Let's start writing a speech. Tell me about what you've done this year. So we go in and we put that down. And he writes the speech, so when he goes before the art committee, he has all these things on his speech that he has accomplished throughout the year, and things where he thinks his weak areas are. He can say, I didn't like this very much. I didn't do as well in this. So by that, he feels that he is leading this committee.
When you're younger, you're told what you're going to do, when you're going to learn it, how you're going to learn it, and this is it. You don't have a choice in it. With the IEPs and including them in them, it has made a huge difference because the kid has to say so. They take ownership. It's empowering them.
Along with decision making, he has to really be willing to accept the responsibility and the consequences for the choices that he makes. And that's been something that, really focused on the last couple of years, particularly with his behavior, whether it's decisions on the classes that he wants to take next year. So if you take this class, the computer arts class, you're not only going to just be working on the computer, you've also got to do some book work that goes with it.
Yes, he said he just didn't understand why he couldn't do what he wanted to do as far as drawing. He said, I don't draw things like that, but he did and he does and he can.
There are various ways that students can be involved in the development of their IEP and in the meeting. From just talking with the student prior to the IEP meeting. Beth, your IEP meeting's coming up. Do you know what that is? Let me tell you what that is about. How would you like to be involved? What are some things you could do? Students could develop a poster, pictures that show the things that they're interested in and things that they'd like to work on the next year. Another example is asking the student who they would like to have come to their meeting. And, maybe the student has a friend that is really important to that student and is a real support during the school day. Maybe there's a neighbor that's provided respite care to the family over a number of years. Students could just introduce the people around the table at the meeting. The student who, at first glance, we might think the student's not going to be able to participate are students who have communicative disorders. others. So a student who might not have verbal communication, we might be stymied at first and think, well, you know, we're going to have to speak for the student. But even this kind of a student, with some pre-planning, can participate in their meeting. One of the examples is a slideshow using some video and some audio clips to share what that student wants to work on and his or her goals for the future.
Hey everybody, welcome to my IEP meeting. Today we are going to plan my classes for next year. My name is DeWitt Van Horn. I go to Normal West High School. Will everybody please introduce themselves?
On the other end, as students begin to have more experience in participating in their IEP meetings, we might actually see a student who really does conduct the meeting. The bottom line is that it is a requirement of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we want to make sure that we are not just meeting the letter of the law, but looking at the intent behind the law. The whole reason that we have an individual education program is for the individual student. So we not only have the legal requirement, but we have the ethical and the moral requirement to involve them in this process. Once students graduate from high school, there are no more entitlements to services. Students really need to know how to speak up and how to share information with other people who might be able to provide them with supports. So if students learn those kinds of skills while they're in school and have time to practice them from their IEP meetings beginning at age 16 or younger on up, then they're just going to be better and more successful at what they want to do after high school.
I was born, obviously, with a disability. I was born with scoliosis, and one.
Okay, I'm going to stop that right there. But that's sort of a very good picture of the student-led transition process, the student-led IEP, and the whole transition process is part of involving them way before the actual meeting and the people sit down to talk about them, okay? So we're going to take a look at this video. This is much shorter, and it's probably more of where we're at today. I want to call it like our present levels of performance. It's a typical IEP meeting and one that might give you a little deja vu.
Thanks everyone for coming today. We're here to discuss Jane and her IEP for the next year. Jane, I'm going to run through a few things I've got here, and you can correct me if these are wrong at all. I've got down that you're very social. You've got 2 younger siblings. Your parents are divorced. You don't communicate with your father regularly. Mom, I've got that you work 3 jobs, and Jane is left to care for the siblings all the time. Is that correct? Yeah. And I've also got down that you have an adoration for babies and want to go into child care providing. And next, Ms. Noyce from the Special Ed Department is going to discuss a little bit what we've got planned for your IEP.
Okay, Jane, so we noticed that you've been struggling in some of your reading, writing, and math scores, so we're going to kind of talk about what's been going wrong with that and how we can get those scores back up to par so that you're on track to graduate on time. So study skills teacher, Ms. Oliver, is going to kind of go over what we can do for that.
Okay, Jane, so on a weekly basis, you're going to be coming to our classroom, to my classroom, for reading comprehension quizzes to improve your grammar and vocabulary skills because your last ISAT scores were pretty low, so we need to get those back up in order for you to graduate. We're also going to need you to write 1 paragraph every day that pertains to your English lesson prior to this class period. It's going to entail writing on a main idea with 2 to 5 sentences with supporting details. Ms. Hamron is going to make sure that I get all of your homework so that you can complete that in class. Right? Okay. So we'll get those and you can complete those in class. And for math, you're going to be coming in to turn in weekly math assignments and quizzes. So Mr. Hollick, if you can make sure that you get those papers to me on time, we'll make sure that Jane gets those completed so that she doesn't fall any further behind in her classes.
Sure, yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so some of the accommodations we've come up with for you for English, I think we're going to work on allowing some more time for the completion of your assignments. We thought it might be a good idea to do some peer modeling so that you can kind of learn from your peers and maybe they can help you out with some of the things you're struggling with. We think that if you're given a highlighter, that might help you understand some more of the key concepts. Computer software with spell check and grammar, because we know that you kind of struggle with spelling at times, and that might help you get a better idea for that. And we might even shorten some of the assignments so that it's not as difficult, and also simplify the text. For math, we're going to eliminate the need to copy problems, and we're going to also give you a handheld calculator. We're going to hear from Ms. Deschambault to talk about your post-school goals.
All right, so Jane, we're here also to discuss your post-school goals, and it says here in your input that you would like to be part of the occupational preparation program at our school. So we have our home ec teacher here to explain some of those classes and what you'll be doing in those.
So we are going to be improving your domestic and financial skills. We're going to work on your independent living skills and help you advance your vocational skills. And we're going to learn how to balance a checkbook in our class. We're going to do a lot of cooking, a lot of sewing, and we're also going to do a baby simulation so you can get some experience with infants. It's going to be a very hard activity, but I think you can do it.
Thank you. And something else we thought might benefit you to help you get to this post-second school goal is we'd like you to volunteer 5 hours a week at the local Boys and Girls Club. Mom, is that doable?
I think we can work it out.
All right. Any other questions?
Will she have any take-home homework? I need to be aware of.
She should be able to complete it all in class. If not, she can work on it the next day. Hopefully she won't get too behind, but she shouldn't have too much homework to do.
If she stays on task with this set, will she be able to graduate?
Yes, as of right now, it looks like she will be able to graduate. She just needs to make sure she stays on top of all of her assignments.
Ms. Deschambault, did you have some concerns that you were kind of wanting to...
Yes, Jane, we are concerned with how much you talk about your adoration of babies with you becoming pregnant while still in high school. So, Mom, we'd like to ask you to take time in your home to discuss preventative measures. Is this something you guys can work on?
Yeah, well, I think this is something we probably need to talk about at home privately, but you're probably right. It probably should be addressed this time.
Okay, any more questions? Jane? Mom?
I'm good.
All right, well, thanks everyone for getting together. I think this has been real productive, and Mom...
Okay. Let's stop that there. I want you to think for a minute what the differences between these two IEP meetings were. Now, I realize that Tom did not smile once in his IEP meeting either, but that was specifically because of his disability condition and not because he was embarrassed beyond belief by the members of this IEP committee. I mean, Jane never said a word. Mom barely spoke. And then we burdened Mom with some things. We've already heard that she has 3 jobs and that Jane takes care of the little kids. And then we tell her, oh, well, she has to go out and volunteer 5 hours a week. And so you have to make that happen as well. Okay, so, I mean, it's just I just wanted you to see the difference between where we're going and where we are right now. Okay. So again, thinking outside the box, I'm going to play this, but it's extremely short, so we'll get through it really fast. Uh-oh. Can you still see?
All right, Sydney, we're going to start working on picking your pictures for your presentation today. Let's start with your first slide. I want Sydney to be as involved as possible in creating her PowerPoint for her presentation at her IEP. In the past, the students in our class have not been involved at all in the IEP process. So this was a way to bring Sydney in and to get her involved in the making of the presentation, and then also for her to be involved later in the actual presenting of her PowerPoint. Okay, now that we've talked a lot about Sydney's strengths, we're going to talk a little bit about the places that Sydney has challenges with. It's the best IEP meeting I have ever been a part of. This is my 8th year teaching. Just having a celebration of the student and having the student involved was the most wonderful. It's all about the student, and that's what it should be.
Okay. I'm going to try and shut this down without shutting everything else. Okay. All right. So as we move forward through our transition training, I want you to keep in mind 4 principles that have to do with the changes in our transition processes. The first is a focus on compliance as well as quality. Yes, we did pass the submission-only transition audit for the 2019-20 school year, which was great, and there are actually 3 of them, but one, transition is 100% compliance indicator, and it's not really fair, but one piece of documentation on one child in one school throws the whole district out of compliance. And over the last couple of years, it's been a bit of a struggle across the district to get the number of folders we needed with 100% compliant paperwork, according to indicator 13. Okay. And, but 2, we've largely neglected the quality of our planning when it comes down to the essence of the law and what it was trying to do to get better post-secondary outcomes for students when it was reauthorized. And then, but 3, is that we will have in 2021-22 school year, we're going to have a desktop review from TEA instead of one consisting solely of data submission. So it won't just be the paperwork compliance, and quality matters anyway. Without a quality transition plan, 30% of students with special needs are being graduated to the couch. The second principle is starting with the end in mind, which is what I did with this presentation. We find out where students want to go, and we make sure that they get there. Transition isn't just getting them from one grade to the next and then to graduation. While, of course, this is an important part of your job as teachers and case managers, the law also asks a year after graduation, are students fulfilling their goals, the goals we developed on their transition supplements? So in essence, the law says that we can't just wish for dreams to be fulfilled for our students. We have to help make them happen with a quality transition plan. So the dream is really what students want to be when they grow up. The goals are those really annoying little post-secondary goals that we write about. And we say after high school, the student will. The plan is the coordinated set of activities. And the reality is indicator 14, which is where is the student 1 year after graduation. The third principle I want you to keep in mind is giving our students a choice and a voice. Now, this has to do with the mandate that we ensure the development of our students' self-determination skills, okay? A broadly defined self-determination is the ability of a person to be actively involved in and in control of his or her own life. So students with self-determination can be described as being able to define goals for themselves, take the initiative to make their goals happen, make choices and understand the consequences of their actions, and seek support when needed. Okay? Every student in our district can do those things to the best of their ability. We just have to think a little bit outside the box to get them there. Okay?
Dr. Mack, can you pause just for a second? We have a request for you to turn your video on because we have some lip readers. Is that possible? That you can turn the video on so they can read your lips? Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right. I'm not sure how much they're going to still be able to read my lips because I'm going to be moving my head a lot. So we help our students develop self-determination skills in establishing their own transition goals, including those post-secondary goals for education and career and independent living, and that's choice. Okay? And we're going to see choice come into play when we start talking about more of the processes in preparation for IEP meetings. We also help students develop self-determination skills when we give them a voice at the table. And we ensure that they're actively involved in the IEP process from the very beginning, that they understand their IEPs, including their specialized instruction and related services, and the accommodations they receive, and that's voice. And I did talk to Mary, and we're looking at ways, because I realize with that one video, we don't have a board in every conference room in schools and high schools. We do have to come up with a way to have children communicate to the IEP committee. And so we're looking at some assistive technology to help us do that. Okay. One of the things that when the reauthorization came about was they did this study and they determined that students really only speak 3% of at their IEP meetings. And so they wanted to change that. Okay, and one of the ways that we're changing that is just by including them in the IEP agenda. So in the old IEP agenda here, there is really no student voice in the agenda, where we list in the parentheses the members who can provide information. Not once is the student's name there. And then over in the significant points, what we've done is we've added the student/chair, okay? And later on, you'll see that when you're using this with a student, and you'll be downloading it and helping the student to write the script right on that IEP agenda. So we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, so if you keep the 4 principles in mind, the focus on compliance and quality, starting with the end in mind, planning for the outcomes, and giving students a choice and a voice, we really should do very well in the desktop audit in a year and a half. Okay. And I know that some of you are probably thinking, oh, why change? I hate change. I like the way we've been doing it, but we need to change. And it isn't, I haven't changed all these processes because I've gotten a new job and I've let power go to my head. It's not a because I say so thing, it's really because the law says so. And so the next few slides, we're just going to really briefly review what that law actually says. So the one we work under currently is called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or we fondly refer to it as IDEA or IDEA. And this act came in on the coattails of the civil rights movement and the efforts to reform public education for all children, because the courts decided that separate was not equal, not for any student. But IDEA didn't start out being called that. Originally, it was called the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, my favorite law, Public Law 94-142, and it was signed into law by Gerald Ford. And I remember so vividly, I was in 10th grade, it was my first year in high school, and somebody came into my English classroom and she was telling us about all these kids that we were going to see come into our classes from now on, and they were going to look different, and we weren't going to be allowed to make fun of them, or and they were telling us about their special needs. And I could raise my hand and I said, well, where the heck are they now? And she said, oh, they're in the building. They're just in their own little wing. And so I cut my next class and I went to find them, and that's how I started my special education career. Okay, so the Education for All Handicapped Children Act was amended in 76, 86, then again in 1990, and then finally it came to be known of what we call it today, IDEA, when it was reauthorized by President Clinton in 1997. And that reauthorization, that was really when the people first language came to be a thing. So because we were now placing greater emphasis on the individual as opposed to a condition that that individual may have. And then it was amended again in 2004, and it was then called the IDEIA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, when it was reauthorized by President Clinton in '97. And then, no, wait, I'm sorry. The IDEA was 2004, IDEIA, and most of the time we leave out the I. We still refer to this as IDEA instead of Improvement Act, and I don't know why we leave out the I, because, I mean, literally there's an I in everything we do for our kids. Let's see where we're at. Okay, and then the act was once again updated with some amendments. And that was in an effort to align the regulations with other education laws, like the Every Student Succeeds Act. At that time, this little gem was added as part of the accountability measures, and using proven practices and strategies. We must now ensure that our students were developing decision-making and self-determination skills. Okay, so overall there are 5 parts to the law. And 2 of them are clearly important for our purposes. One, that the services are designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. And then we have to assess the effectiveness of our efforts, because special education costs a lot of money, and the feds want to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. We are accountable to both of these purposes through reporting of Indicator 13 and 14. Now, since the law itself is really wordy, fairly hard to digest, the best way to access this information is by reading the frameworks produced by Region 18. And there is a link if you want to read that framework. But in that the whole IDEA framework, you're going to find information on the IEP committee, right? The Admission Review and Dismissal Committee, and all the rules pertaining to that. And this is where you find transition, okay? And as you see, it really is an important part. It's listed in the regulations. It's an important part of the IEP meeting. It comes right after the determination of eligibility and just before the present levels. And so what that tells us is that it, along with eligibility assessment, drives the rest of the IEP. And it really is the vision and the framework for team members to develop the plan for the student. Okay, let's see. All right, so we've already talked about that it's a results-oriented process. But I also wanted to point out that the law says that we have to take into account the student's strengths, preferences, and interests. And a lot of times, you know, we've always been told that we have to talk about the student's weaknesses because the weaknesses are where we get the IEPs from, the goals from. And really, that's not the best way to go. Research says it's not the best way to go about this, that we have to start from a strengths model. So we have to talk about the student's strengths and how those strengths are going to help them in instruction with their related services, community experiences, and all of that. So according to the framework, there are many things we have to do by certain ages. So by age 14, there's an entire list of things that we have to do. And you really, if you read this, it would look exactly like what our transition supplement looks like. I'm just going to highlight some particular words that are important: the child involvement, the parent involvement, the use of and creation of goals, and the referral to governmental agencies. By age 16, we have to use the age-appropriate transition assessments, and all of this I'm sure you're already familiar with. The courses of study, that's down here. That's the 4-year plan. And while you're not directly responsible for writing the 4-year plan, there are sometimes instances in when you can suggest to students or talk to students about particular courses that they may want to take because of their career goals. And then we have to try and help get them into those classes. So like those career and technology education classes that are really kind of separate a lot of the times from our students in life skills programming. But we have to get them into those classes. Okay, and then by age 17, you know this to be the transfer of rights, and then the summary of performance at the graduation ARD. Okay, so this is that self-determination piece again that I talked to about earlier. When the regs were updated to be consistent with the education, or what was it called, Every Student Succeeds Act, it was determined that research-proven strategies were needed to ensure successful post-secondary outcomes for our students, because at the time, those post-secondary outcomes for our students were really deplorable across the nation. And the feds didn't want the schools to be graduating kids to the couch. They wanted to ensure that the students would have the skills to get jobs, to continue to pursue their education or their training, as well as complete adult chores like voting, filing taxes, setting up bank accounts, participating in leisure activities, things like that. So in order to lead self-determined lives, there are a number of self-skills, and to name a couple that are really important to us and really important to developing in our students, one of them is self-awareness, which is a basic understanding of one's strengths, your abilities, your needs. And in completing transition assessment and data gathering with your student, you will help him or her to understand their disability and what they need from others and their environment because of their disability. Self-efficacy is another one of those self-skills, and that is a belief in one's own ability to succeed in specific situations or accomplish specific goals. Because if a student doesn't believe that they have control over whether they're successful, they're not going to be successful. And the way you develop that in your students is that when a student studies and gets a good grade on an assignment or a test, you don't say to the student, oh, you must be so smart. You say, oh, studying paid off. Good job. Self-regulation, where's that? There's another one. And that's the ability to monitor and control one's own behaviors, actions, and skills in various situations. So if you have a student who has needs in this area, you can help her to figure out what's going on, to develop strategies for similar situations, and then monitor those strategies for effectiveness. Okay. And then there's self-advocacy. And that's in a screen all by itself. Okay, so that's really one of the most important ones for transition. And the IEP process. Self-advocacy refers to an individual's ability to effectively communicate, convey, negotiate, or assert his or her own interests, desires, needs, and rights. Okay. So once a student has been able to master some of those self-skills, they are said to be able to lead more self-determined lives. They can set goals, make choices, problem solve, and make decisions. And then have happy, independent lives after high school. Okay. So far we've looked at where we want to be, where we are today, and we've addressed the why we have to make the changes we need to make. Okay. And now we're going to address the how. I think I'm missing a slide here. I'm not sure. Okay, so the case managers, you guys are going to be responsible for the entire process, the entire transition process from start to finish. So you may remember the last couple of years, the VAC teachers have come in and done the transition assessments for your entire population at the school. Well, they're no longer going to be doing that. That's going to be one of your jobs, to meet individually with a student, to do that assessment with the student instead of that blitz. Okay. And I know you guys have a ton on your plate, and this isn't going to make your life any easier, and so I apologize right now for that. Okay, so you're going to start out the process the same way that you always do. You're going to gather information from the student. And you're going to start this process very early on, because as you'll see, it's not a one and done activity. A lot of times the case managers will just meet with the student, do the questionnaire, and then go away and then just write the class and the goals and everything in a separate location. And the student really doesn't have any control or say over any of that information. So in order to look at self-determination, the first thing you're going to do is assess the student's awareness of the disability condition, okay? But that could be a hard conversation to have with a student. So you might want to first talk about all the people, the athletes, the actors, actresses, musicians, genius scientists, journalists who have disabilities and have been able to lead active, successful lives. You might also, if you know of somebody, if you or somebody you know has a disability, you might be able to talk about that with the student in order to get the student then to be able to not be embarrassed about disclosing their disability and what they need because of that disability. Okay. When I was 21, I was in a severe car accident. And I got hit in the head and had a traumatic brain injury. And I ended up in the hospital for 3 months. And since then, I've had significant trouble recalling information, okay? It's always at the tip of my tongue. And I always have trouble with, especially with people's names. And so my family and my close friends, they know this, that I have this traumatic brain injury. So if we're out and we meet somebody in public that I know and they don't know, they know to put out their hand and introduce themselves, because I'm not going to be able to do it. And and I've compensated for that as well. So I've had my support system, and I've compensated by just calling everybody hun or dear, or not calling them by any names at all. And that often comes off as rude, but it's part of my disability. We need to tell students that disability is a natural part of the human experience. This is a preamble to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And it is so important that many of the laws that govern the rights of people with disabilities include this as part of their law. Okay. Disability is a natural part of the human experience, and it in no way diminishes the right of individuals to participate in or contribute to society. And our students really need to understand that at whatever level they're at. Okay. So when you're talking about gathering information from students, this, for instance, this is one of the disability awareness questionnaires. And so once this is over, once this is over and I get all your names, I have a course, a transition course in Schoology, and you'll have access to that course, which is really just this. You'll take an assessment, and once you've completed the assessment and you answer a couple of questions, I'm going to send you the code to the transition group. And in the transition group is where you're going to find all the resources you're going to need to complete all these assessments. Okay? So this is one of them, about asking the student about what they know about their disability and their IEPs. What you have to do is you'll come to this and you'll download it. And once you've downloaded it, you'll be able to fill in all the answers. Okay? And another thing that I've really tried to do is transfer everything to electronic form, because we are finally going doing the paper reduction thing, and we're going paperless. There's no more blue folder. So in the past, when you've done all this data collection, you clipped it together and you put it in the blue vocational folder. There is no more blue vocational folder. Okay? So what you'll do is you'll have this stuff electronically, and you'll be able to email it to the diagnosticians, who then are supposed to be saving it on flash drives. Okay. So this is just one of the assessments, and let me see how I can get out of that. Okay. So when you get to that group, you'll be able to, let me go back to share screen. Okay. So let me just go here. Okay, so when you're in that group, you'll be able to determine where you want to go for what assessments. So it'll start out with a checkbox, middle school or high school, and then the level of the student, because these assessments have to be age appropriate, and then you'll get the icons, and you'll have icons for many different types of assessments, and part of these are the self-determination assessments, and these you're familiar with: the AIR self-determination, the ARC self-determination, choice maker, and there are a couple more. I just put some of these in here for just sample purposes. So I'm not sure why it is not. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so then step 2, you're going to talk about the student about what his or her hopes and dreams are for themselves in the short and the long term. You're just going to ask them, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? Okay. And this is the time of self-discovery for a lot of students. Who am I? What do I want to be when I grow up? All those kinds of questions that we're going to ask them, or have them do vision boards, or we also have some different types of assessments that you can download, like a hopes and dreams assessment, where and I know this is probably going to screw up the whole presentation by opening this. Again, it would be a downloadable and fillable form, and these are just questions you're asking. Some of the others are more visual. It has little cloud boxes, and the student will draw or cut out pictures for what they want to do and where they want to live and things like that. And then they can bring those types of artifacts to the IEP committee and share it with the IEP committee. Okay. All right. So, and then you're going to talk about all the different transition assessments that are out there that are supposed to be. Now, all transition assessments are designed to gather information about a student's strengths, preferences, and interests in relation to their career goals. Okay. So again, you're going to see icons like this to talk about. We're going to ask the student, well, do you want to do an assessment that tells us what your strengths are, or do you want to just talk about those personal choices that you want? Like, for instance, I don't want to work outdoors. I want to work indoors. That's a personal preference related to work. And then their interests. What are they curious about? What do they spend their time doing? Okay. So again, there'll be icons. You'll be able to open them up, download them, fill them out, and you could also, because sometimes you may be doing these transition meetings with your students by Zoom instead of face-to-face, you can share these, do a share screen just like I'm doing, or you can send them to the student to complete, and then talk about the results. Okay, and that's where step 4 comes in. You give them the assessment, review the results with them and what they mean, and then you talk about with the student how he's going to use this information and how he's going to present it to the committee. For instance, the student could be saying in his scripts, I decided to take the AIR self-determination assessment, and it told me that I really need to do some work in this area, or no, I'm really, really good at making choices and speaking up for myself. And they're going to present that to the IEP committee, depending on the cognitive levels and the abilities of your students. Okay. And then you're going to talk with the student about teacher vocational surveys. Now, in the past, we've had a couple of levels. We've called them level 1, level 2, and level 3, I think. They're really tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but I didn't rename them. So level 1, it was that basic teacher survey that we sent out year after year after year. It's been in the district forever. It talks about job skills, work skills, and interpersonal skills, or something like that. Okay, so those have been revamped. More of them have been created, and so here are just some of them. It's a matter of which one the student wants to do, but also a matter of where they are in their transition planning and what they already know about what they want to do. So if they really don't know what they want to do, they have no clue, and they don't even know what their skills are like, you can do the OneNet, the ONET survey, and I'm going to open that one up. And that one you would send out to teachers if they're in out classes and things like that, where it is all the skills that are listed on that site, right? And then once the child gets this back, we would go to that site and we would put in all the strengths that teachers say the student displays in the classroom. And then we click a button and it tells us all the jobs that use those skills. And so then the student can talk about those jobs and which one they might like to investigate. Okay. Go back to that, yes. Okay. And then once we finish meeting with the student that first time, we gather information from the teachers. And we do that the same way that you've been doing it for years. You send out those vocational teacher surveys that are appropriate. You use whatever processes on your campus and forms that are on your campus to collect information on their academic and functional skills. And you've always done that for the present levels of performance. Okay. And then you also gather information from the guardians or the parents. And I've heard that there have been some problems with the questionnaire, that parents don't really want to answer in 9 or 12 questions, that maybe they don't have time, maybe they don't understand why we're asking them these questions. So really what you just want to know from the parents is what hopes and dreams do they have for their child? And if they say, oh, I just want them to be happy, you say, well, what does happiness look like? What will that look like for your child? Okay. And then you ask them if they think they're going to need help in any areas related to independent living. And then you ask them what kinds of skills they think they need to develop. Okay, and then you meet with the student again, yes. And at that time, you're going to review all the previous information. You're going to help them write the measurable post-secondary goals. Remember, those are after high school, Johnny will obtain a degree in business, those things. You're also going to help the student develop through the course of study. Again, you are not responsible for the 4-year plan, but you might be able to suggest that they take welding, or we had a student who took the PALS class, and a student, I think it was the same student who took a child development class because she was interested in daycare. And then you're going to help the student develop the coordinated set of activities. Again, even if they come up with just one of those activities, they've had some part of that planning. Okay. And then you're going to talk about what goals they might want to. So we always have the academic and the functional goals, and then we put that little stem on it that says, and this will support the post-secondary goal of education, right? So we just want to talk to the student like, well, where do you think you need the help? And if the student says math, say, oh, great, well, we're going to put a math goal in, okay? And we're going to connect that to your training, because in the job that you want, you're going to need some math skills, okay? So again, they've had some part of that decision making. And you're also going to review the student directed IEP process and start the narrative. And so here again, you'll be able to download the agenda, and I think I can open it here, yes. You'll download it, you'll be able to go right in to these sections and help the student develop the script, practice the script with the student. And they may not be able to do everything where it says student will do this, but as long as they do some of this and they build up to doing a lot of it, then we can say that we've helped them develop their self-determination skills. Okay. And then you're going to meet with the student a third time. Remember, I said it's not a one and done situation, and you're going to prepare them for the IEP meeting, and you're going to practice until they're comfortable with doing everything that you say and that he or she says they're going to do at the IEP meeting. Okay. Yeah, the one thing I forgot to talk about is the coordinated set of activities. And I tried to bring that up so that I could put it in here, but because it was from Success Ed, it wasn't working right. But the coordinated set of activities, I think that for last year, you were doing that as a 1 year, vision. So you're thinking about in the next year, just like you do with everything else in the IEP meeting, for the next year, the student might have to do this, 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 or this to achieve their post-secondary goals in instruction or in related services and things like that. But the CSA is actually a long-range plan. So we have to decide, where the student is going, and in any of those areas, instruction, related services, employment, and adult living, where they're going to need to develop some activities that either they will do, or the parent will be responsible for, or the school will help them do, or an outside agency will help them do. Okay. And speaking of the outside agency, when you talk to the parent, you're also going to ask them, hey, are you working with somebody from Texas Workforce Commission or Harris County, right? HCIDD, I think that's what it's called now. And if they say, yes, I am, then say, oh, great. Well, we'd like to invite them to the IEP meeting. So why don't you give me their contact information, hopefully email, and I'm going to send you this permission slip to give us permission to invite them to the IEP meeting. And then if they say no, say, well, it's really important for post-school activities to get Johnny or Beth any services that they need, that they do get onto these what they're calling interest lists, because they are very long, and there might be a significant gap in time between graduation from high school and the time when their name comes up in one of these lists and they get some government support for their student. Okay. And then this was just a website I was going to show you, but I don't need to do it now. Once you get the transition group, you'll be able to. It's going to be very user friendly. You're going to be able to look at some videos that will help you to write the CSA, because that's one of the things that has been changed as well. You used to be able to use the drop-down boxes, and I don't want you to use the drop-down boxes anymore. So you'll have some videos, you'll have some cheat sheets about the activities that you can cut and paste and put into the CSA and things like that. Okay, so that's basically it. I know it was long, and I apologize. I'm looking at some very tired faces. Does anybody have any questions? I hear somebody talking, but I didn't hear the question, if it was a question.
No, that was just Allison reading the chat to me.
Okay.
No, I think we're going to give them a little, like a 5-minute break before Charles starts, and if they have any questions, they can email us or you. And can you share this presentation with me so I can put it on our Life Skills Resources page or group?
It's actually going to be in the transition course, and they have to access it there because there's an assessment that's going to go along with it. And once they complete the assessment, and I've seen that they've completed the assessment, then I'm going to be able to push the transition group to them, which is where they'll access all of the materials that they need.
Okay. And everybody knows how to get on the transition course? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Either you or Mary.
knows, so let's just go over that one more time real quick.
And I have to get the the names of everybody in that group to push it forward into the course, to push it forward.
Okay.
Okay.
So they could be looking for that. Okay.
Yes.
Linda, I just want to say great presentation. I love that we're moving towards such a student-focused model, and I thought you were very positive about it. So nice job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, don't hesitate to email me if you have questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.
Yeah,
Don't
we'll get,
Charles is coming up.
Charles is coming up, and if you need no more than 5 minutes to restroom something, that way I can get him started to share his screen, and then he'll start at 10:05.
Hey, have you made me a host yet?
I can't find you. Okay, now that you're talking, maybe you'll pop up. There you are.
Hello, hello,
All right,
hello.
I'm doing it right now.
Thank you.
Boom, done. You are a co-host. And so we told them to, they had 5 minutes to let you get ready, and they can use the restroom, so 10:05.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, I am too. You ready, Charles?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We good to go?
I think so.
All righty. Okay, so you know, hopefully y'all are getting yourselves logged in, because towards the end, I want you to get into the live side of Review 360 and play around with it. But I encourage you to log in with Google. That is the easiest way to log in. Logging in with Google follows your district's login and password rather than creating a separate Review 360 one. So it's one less to have to remember or to forget, however you want to look at it. So I highly encourage you to use the login with Google option. And then just and it'll take you to the home page. You might have to, the first time around, go through like the legal stuff, but other than that, when you log in, your screen should look something like this. Okay, so I'm going to start with a PowerPoint that kind of describes a little bit about Review 360, which I'm sure most of you are probably already familiar with. And then I'm going to start with the end in mind about what does it look like for actually taking data. And then the third part of today is to how to go in to actually create the plans. But let me start with this PowerPoint. So Review 360, it's a data collection program. It facilitates taking data, but the good part these days is you can easily set up these plans by pulling the information from SuccessEd. Once it's in Review 360, you go in, you collect your data, and then when you're ready to do progress reports, you can send all of the collected data for a given date range back to SuccessEd for the very fast creation of progress reports without going through a lot of paper and crunching numbers. It does all of that for you. All right, so there's two basic plans in Review 360, which are the academic progress plan and the behavior tracking plan. These days, we're kind of pushing other areas in these plans to collect data. So a lot of the resource teachers have begun to use the behavior tracking plan to track the usage of accommodations. And also, some of the teachers use the academic plan to track some of the behavior goals. You would probably never put an academic goal in the blue plan or the behavior plan, but there are many goals, given the nature of how the data is collected for functional and behavior goals, where it would actually be better to put those in the orange plan. And we'll take a look at one of those in a little bit. All right, so in Review 360, there's going to be three basic roles. You have two case manager roles and a classroom teacher role. Creating a plan, that's essentially no different than creating paper data collection sheets. You've got all of these goals, you got to put them somewhere in order to record and take data. So that's one case manager role. The other case manager role is like with the paper analogy, at the end of the grading period, you've got to take all this information and report progress on it. So that would be another case manager role in Review 360. And then the teacher role is simply scoring a plan in Review 360 speak, but that's just simply taking data. Okay, so the academic progress plan allows you to input data depending on how you're currently doing it on paper and how the criterion of the goal is written. So the most common usages are going to be academic grades, which is essentially a basic percentage, X out of X trials, yes, no, and frequency counts. So in academic grades, again, it's a basic percentage. So if the criterion of a goal is written to 60%, and if like on paper, every time you take data, you're putting down a number between 0 and 100, this would be the option to choose. And so it's recorded in Review 360 on the scoring screen. Again, this 92 would be typed in. And then when it reports on a summary report or sent back to SuccessEd, it just takes all of the entries over a given date range and gives a return as an average outcome. The next option is X out of X trials. And this one, you can do a couple of different things with it, but if you do have a goal that is actually written as, let's say for the example here, 3 out of 5, this would be the option that you choose. Just make certain that every time you go to make a data entry on that, if the goal is written 3 out of 5, you're entering X out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, whatever the case may be. Again, just make certain that if it is written as a trial, that you're actually entering it with the number of trial expectation is. And then when that gets reported, it'll return a percentage, which we don't really care about if it was written as a trial. We care about this 4.3. And this 4.3 is what would be reported back on a progress report, again, over the tabulation within a given date range. The next option is yes, no, and this is essentially a plus or a minus. Every time you take data on that, the plus is they exhibited the desired academic outcome, and maybe in some cases a behavioral or functional outcome, or they didn't. It's a yes or a no, a plus or a minus. And then what that gives you a return when you run a summary report is however many, you just rack up as many in a given date range, and it's going to return the percentage of them that were yes versus the percentage that were no. Again, this is the basic example of a plus minus data collection type system. Okay, frequency counts. This is where you might actually use the academic plan to score a functional or behavior goal. If you're trying to replace a behavior or extinguish a behavior, or you want the frequency to be, in this example, 3 or less over a given amount of time, that's where you would make that entry. So the scoring input in this case, you would just put in a 4, and then the return is going to, however entries that were input, it's just going to return an average of all of those entries, again, over a given date range, which is typically going to be an entire grading period. Okay, so the blue plan, things are kind of limited. When you're creating an orange plan, you're going to see that you can put in all sorts of, you have options for the way you want to collect the data that we just looked at. But for the behavior plan, the default setting is essentially collecting data 7 times a day. That correlates to the 7 periods of the Bell schedule. So this is where if a behavior is clearly observable, they either exhibited the desired behavior or they didn't during second period, then that's where you would say yes or no, essentially. If you have a behavior that's written as a trial, it doesn't really work in the behavior plan. You could put this back in the academic plan if you needed to, but if the behaviors are written as an accuracy, percent of charted opportunities, behavior plan works really well for those types of inputs. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to start with the end in mind. So after you've gone in and created all of these plans, the students will appear in the spotlight box. So let's look at this student's academic plan, or I'm sorry, we're going to start with the behavior plan. So once all of this is input, the plans have been created, when you're actually going in to score it, this is what it looks like. So these numbers 1 through 7 correlate to the Bell schedule in secondary. So some campuses are using the strategy section of Review 360 to document the usage of accommodations. So fourth period, if they use check for understanding, you would just check off with it. Maybe oral testing, you don't do that every day, so you wouldn't select it. But if the student needed extended time, you could enter. Now, where it says behavior goal 1 and behavior goal 2, this is where the goal that was imported from Success Ed would actually appear. So the default setting is simply full point, yes, they exhibited the desired behavior outcome 4th period, or no point. Then you save, okay? Now, every now and then you might need to add a note. So click on add note. It doesn't talk to the parents, so you don't need to worry about that, but complete the anecdotal session notes if there's something that you needed to say. If you're using the accommodations part, you might want to make a comment about the accommodations, other strategies that worked or didn't work. You know, what I like to say about this section right here, is if on paper data, if you thought it was important to scribble down that day, this is where you would put that information, and this all gets archived and can be printed out later on a report. And again, make certain that you save. You can always go backwards if you need to. So if you come up here and click on the calendar, the date, the calendar icon comes up, and you could jump back to previous days if you needed to as well, or to see, maybe you wanted to see how the student did earlier in the week. You could look back at that information that might have been recorded earlier, or if you needed to go back and re-record something, you could do that as well. All right, so that's pretty much what happens in the blue plan, the behavior plan. Again, it works really well for clearly observable daily classroom behaviors. Now, to go back home to the spotlight box, you can click on the house or the little Pearson icon, and it's going to bring you back to the spotlight box. So now let's take a look at what the academic options look like. So to click on the little orange icon. So one of the good things about the academic plan is it will show you 5 days at once, okay? So you'll see that this is under today. So where it says frequency counts, this is what the actual goal would be. I've just titled them frequency counts so you could see what the scoring options are inside of the academic plan. But again, this would be where the actual goal from Success Ed would be imported into Peer. So let's say we're going to score the frequency counts. So when you go in, you're simply clicking on the plus sign and putting in the number if you were taking a frequency count that day. And you should always add a note, especially if it is an academic goal, to at least specify what the student was engaged in or what the activity was, at a minimum specifying the assignment or the activity, but you might also want to include any other information. If the student needed extended time or any other supports or information that you want to document for future usage. Again, I like to say, thought it was important to put on paper data collection as a written note. That's where you would add it in Review 360. Okay, so yes, no scoring, simply yes, they did it, or no, they didn't. As you can see, multiple entries can be made on a day if you were able to take several observations. Click on OK and make certain that you save. Percentages are simply entered, again, a number between 0 and 100. And save. And X out of X trials, you're inputting the information. Again, make certain that if it's written X out of 5, that you're entering the information as X out of 5. And save. As you can see in this example here, it really wasn't entered correctly because it says 3 out of 7. So you could go back and edit that to 5 if you needed to, and save. So once all of this information is input over a given period of time, you can run a summary report. So the summary report information right here for a given date range is what gets automatically sent over to Success Ed when you're in Success Ed creating progress reports. So the frequency count average, this 2.5, would be reported back in Success Ed. If you're using the plus minus yes no option, the 79% is what would automatically be imported into Success Ed as a percentage for a given date range. And again, the 51.7, that's the academic grades or basic percentage calculation, and the 2.8 would be the information that you would want for an average of trials out of a given set. And again, you can always click on the calendar to go back to previous weeks if you needed to look at that information as well. And there's other ways to run reports. We can look at that later on. I mean, really, as you're getting started, there's nothing to see with reports because there's no data to pull the report information on. So again, this is the end in mind. This is what it looks like when you're, once the plans have all been created in Review 360, and they're ready to be sent out for yourself or the paras or any other SPED staff to take data. And in some cases, some gen ed teachers are in Review 360 as well to take data. Okay, so now I'm going to hop over to the, show you, well, what does this look like when I'm, now how do I create a plan? So that's why I was hoping that most of y'all have gotten yourselves logged in today. And I'm going to demo creating a plan so you can see how it talks to Success Ed. And then towards the end, we'll play around with actually pulling up students. I'm hoping y'all can pull up students and play around with creating some academic and behavior plans. So the best way to look for a student, once you're in Review 360, at least the first go around, is to enter the student's last name into the magnifying glass. Just like Success Ed, type in 3 or 4 letters of their last name and let it auto-populate. Okay, so once you get to this screen, it's going to bring you to what we call the student profile page. And for many of the students that you're pulling up, there might not be any current plans in place because they've never been in Review 360. But let's say that you do have something sitting out there. You need to get rid of it because all this stuff here is essentially like the old data collection sheets. After you have a new meeting, you got to get rid of the old data collection sheets and create new ones. Well, the analogy of getting rid of the old data collection sheets here is simply ending the plan. Now, I want you to pay attention to see where it says ended plans. Right now, this says 14. As I end this plan, it's going to archive up here. And now it says 15. And as I end the academic plan, it now says 16. So all of the plans that I've ended on this student, they're all archived right here. They can always be retrieved at any time. Some of these plans can even be brought back. So for example, right now, I'm going to go in and continue this, resurrect the plan, and I've just brought that plan back as if it had never been ended. The analogy here is you've got a folder, it's the end of the year, close that folder, you put it in the file cabinet. When you come back in August, you get that folder out, and you've got all your data collection again. That's all you're doing is archiving it. It never goes away. Okay, so now let's what does it look like when you're actually creating a plan and importing from Success Ed? So let's go ahead and we're going to start with the behavior tracking plan. And typically, as the lead teacher would be the same thing as you being the case manager. So as the lead teacher, it's going to default to you. You might not have to go through this step because you're already tied specifically to your campus as a special ed teacher in Review 360. And it might ask you, you can just click OK on this pop-up as well. So now we're ready to create this plan. In most cases, the only thing that you would be doing on this plan tab is the start date. And the start date would be the date in most cases of the IEP meeting date, okay? So if the meeting is in October, you would choose whatever the date is in October. It's typically going to default to an August date for that school year. We can leave it set for August for right now, but again, the start date would typically be the start date of the IEP meeting. Just go ahead and leave the number of periods defaulted to 7. We don't use the token economy part. The strategy is only if you were using Review 360 to document accommodations would you select one of these options. But for this demo, we're just going to leave it off. Classroom rules are only used by the AB programming, so you can leave that deselected. The default setting is single point. That's the option that that gets most of the usage. If you needed to track things more than every 15 minutes, you would go in and change this to 4, and then you would be able to track the behaviors every 15 minutes. But again, for this demo purpose, we're only going to leave it at single point. And targeted objectives, in most cases, we leave that deselected as well. So go ahead and save. And so the next place that you want to pop over to is importing the objectives from Success Ed. So we're going to go from the Plan tab to the Objectives tab. and we're going to import Success Ed goals. Okay, so now I want to hop over to Success Ed real quick. And you don't need to have Success Ed necessarily pulled up to do this, but I want you to see, well, where is it pulling this information from? And it's pulling it from the progress reports. So before you're in Review 360 and you want to start importing the information from Success Ed, you got to have a good, clean set of progress reports. So after a meeting, you want to make certain that all the old stuff has been coded out and it's down at the bottom, because this information that you see right here, this is where it's pulling from. We don't care about this stuff down here. It's been dispensed with. It's coded out. We've got a new set of goals, annual goals that we're interested in taking data on. So again, make certain that you've got a clean set. The old stuff is at the bottom, and the DIAC has locked the, you're not going to be able to import anything into Review 360 until it's been locked in Success Ed, and all of that information in the progress report section is sitting out here in the active tab. Okay, so we're in the blue plan, so we're going to import these behavior goals. And again, where it says behavior goal, this would be the actual written text from Success Ed that has the time frame, conditions, behavior, and criterion. So we're going to add that, and it automatically just pull that information over. You might need to edit the goal. This one, let's maybe say it was written at 90%, was the mastery expectation, so you can go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and import the other behavior goal. And you can see the first one's already been selected, so you don't have to worry about double selecting anything. And click on Add. We're going to save that. And maybe we need to edit this one to 85%. Be sure to save. And we are done adding the objectives for this student. Now, the only other thing that you might need to do is come back here and go to the Teacher tab. And this is where you would go in and select whatever teachers need to be added to the plan, okay? So again, if any other students, any other paras or other staff that are working with the student, that's where you would add them. I mean, you wouldn't go out and add, pass out paper data collection sheets, people that aren't working with the student, so you wouldn't add them to the plan if they're not working with the student. You go ahead and save that. And then that would essentially, you would be done with the blue plan for any behavior goals that you wanted to track. Now let's go in and add an academic plan. So we're going to go to Academic Progress Plan, choose the teacher. And then on this, in the academic plan, the only thing that you would ever change on the plan tab here would be the start date of the plan, again, which is going to be the, in most cases, the date of the IEP meeting. So we're going to go save that. Hop over to the Objectives tab. And we're going to, again, import from Success Ed. So as you can see, they all appeared again, including the behavior goals. I'm going to go ahead and import one of the behavior goals into Review 360 because, like I said, there might be some instances where the academic plan might be a better place to actually collect the data for a behavior goal. So this is the scoring type. Again, the frequency counts would typically be a behavior functional goal that you would want to put in the academic plan, save it, and then you need to set the criterion. But typically for frequency counts, we're looking at a number or less, correct? So then you would go in and save that. So the criterion for this goal is that the student will exhibit some behavior 4 or less times per a given amount of time. And that's how that would be set up. Now let's import the English goal. As you can see, the behavior goal's already been input. So we're going to do the English goal. And let's say that this one is a plus or minus. So we're just going to leave it at yes, no. We would change the goal to yes and go ahead and save it. And the English goal has now been imported. Let's go ahead and do the math goal. Let's say the math goal needs to be documented. It's written as a trial. So you would choose X out of X trials. The you would want to set it as X out of X. And let's say the goal, the expected mastery level is 3 out of 5. Go ahead and save that. And this plan is now set up with all of the goals. Again, the only other thing that you would typically be doing at this point would be to go in and add the teachers to the plan. So now let's see what it looks like when we go to score this plan. So usually when you would score it, you could score it from the spotlight box. Let me add myself to the plan. Whoops. So since I'm on this plan, the student will appear in the spotlight box. So to score it, you would just come right over here, just like earlier, and click on the little icon. And that's the information that we just imported from Success Ed. I didn't add any accommodations, but to go ahead, now you're ready to score the plan. No point, the student did not exhibit the desired behavioral outcome, or full point, yes, they did, save it. And if I wanted to add a note, I could come here, say what I need to say, click on OK, and save. You can also get to the scoring screen from the student profile page. So let's go take a look at the academic plan and score it. So this is what it would look like. Remember, even though this is the orange plan and typically orange is academic, we can import from Success Ed the behavior goals. So this one here would be, again, it's a frequency count. The student only exhibited the behavior 2 times. Maybe you didn't have a chance to document it back on Wednesday, so you can go back there and the student only exhibited the behavior once. And you're going to click on OK and make certain that you save. And you will see that if we were to run a summary report, it would be 1.5 times would be the average frequency count for this week. So the English goal would be, let's say it's written as a yes or a no. You had a couple of opportunities to take goals on that and that one. Again, this would be a good example if you're currently taking data as a plus or a minus. You can save it. As you can see, you can do multiple entries on a given day. And then like the math goal, you could go in and maybe they only got 2 out of 5 correct today. And if you had data from Tuesday, maybe it was 4 out of 5. Again, just make certain that if it is written as a trial, you're always entering the second number, the 5 in this case, consistently every time that you take data. And again, you should always add a note for academics, at least specifying what the assignment or activity was, or any other information that you want to be able to refer to in the future as you're programming for the next cycle for the student.
Hey, Charles?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we get some clarification of something? It's just a lot of people are asking, and I think I might know the answer, but I want to make sure. You keep saying goals. If we're working on a benchmark during that grading period, they would put that benchmark in as the goal?
Yes, that's a great question. Okay. So one of the good things about, especially in the academic plan, in a sense, Review 360 treats, whether it's an annual goal, benchmarks, they're all entered equally. And one of the good things is where it says like 3 of 3 objectives right here, let's say that you weren't working on this English goal. Let's say you had like an annual goal and an annual goal and 3 benchmarks. Well, let's say that one of those benchmarks was the 3rd grading period of this year. Well, you could turn it off so it doesn't clutter your scoring screen. Just make it go away. You want to keep this as decluttered as possible. I mean, because a lot of y'all's goals with the benchmarks, I mean, the screen could get really, 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 really long. But again, you can only make the scoring screen for academics only display what you're currently taking data on. And then at the next grading period, you could turn off the previous benchmark for the previous grading period and turn on only the one for the current grading period.
All right, I hope that helps.
That's
we're asking.
A great question. That's a great question. Okay. And there are some other goals where, and you know, we'll look at this later, where you would be able to maybe enter an incident report. I don't want to get into that too much right now because it gets kind of confusing about where to document those. But some of your frequency counts might be the student will do something maybe 6 or less times per a grading period. There's other ways to document that in Review 360. I'll get with Mary and Stephanie to take a look at how to do that. But those can definitely be documented in several different ways within Review 360. Because some goals you don't need to document every single day. But again, there's still other ways to input that information. So I would encourage you now to try to go, if you're logged in, go to the magnifying glass and start looking for your kids. Just type in a name and pull them up and create plans. And once you're in there, you know, like, go ahead and create a plan. And while you don't want to go in and start creating and ending a bunch of plans, it's okay to end a plan when you're playing around with it if you mess up. You know, again, don't create like 25 plans and end them. Try to, I mean, if you do, it's okay, but try to avoid that if you can, so you don't have this huge cluttered ended plans list. But please get in there and play, you know, find your students, start clicking around so you can see what the features are and some of the things that you can do with Review 360. And also, some of you, let me show you another trick. If you are logged in, you might see a bunch of kids right here, a bunch of resource kids that you have nothing to do with. By all means, make those kids go away. So if you see a bunch of resource kids here that you don't know who they are, you don't work on them, because as SPED teachers, y'all have extra rights, so all of those kids are going to appear. If you come to the gear icon, click on drop down and check off only list my students and save it, all of those kids will go away so that you can keep your spotlight box to only see kids that you are the case manager or you're responsible for taking data on those kids. So that's who's going to be here. So if the other case, one of your other teachers added you as the teacher on a student's plan, those students will appear right here, as well as anyone for whom you are the lead teacher or case manager. Another thing that I want to point out about this spotlight box, even though, let's say you go in and create plans, there's a few conditions that need to occur for those kids to appear in the spotlight box. They have to have goals added to the plan. So you can start a plan for a kid and not add goals. If the kid has no goals, they're not going to appear right there. If you are not a teacher on that plan, the students are not going to appear in the spotlight box. If you've selected only list my plans, and the plans will not appear until they're active with the start date. So let's say you create a plan today and you input the start date as September 8th, which would be okay if the kids didn't have any previous plans. If you did the start date today, those kids are not going to show up in the spotlight box until September 8th rolls around. Okay, so then back in Success Ed, once you've had all this data input for a while, in order to import from Review 360 into Success Ed, you would just come here, create a progress report, select the reporting period and click on Import Data, and it will automatically import that data from that was entered in the reporting period 1 date range for secondary. I cannot demo that right now because it's not after September 8th, but after September 8th, if there were any data input into Review 360, whatever it's currently at from the start date of that grading period to the current day's date or the end of that grading period, it would automatically import that information into the progress statement box. Again, when I showed you earlier the summary report information, that's what would automatically appear right here. Okay, I'm going to try to hop over to the some of the chat questions and see. Okay, that's a good question about resurrecting. At the beginning of the year, you kind of have two options. You can, if you would want to resurrect a plan, if you know you've got a good plan that you left off in May or June, and come August, you know it's a good plan, you would want to resurrect it. But if you wanted to tweak the plan or you didn't have any confidence in it, you inherited it from the previous year, you weren't the case manager, you can always start a new plan. It's not a big deal.
I put in the chat, but I just want to say it out loud. In our life skills teachers group, where all our resources are for IEPs and behavior and all of that, Charles has created a folder in there with step-by-step guides and different things, and we'll put this video in there for you guys to refer back to. But there's a lot of resources on this 360 folder that Charles created in our resource. It's not the curriculum group, it's the resource group.
Okay, so here's a question about the start date. If you're starting a brand new plan today, you can almost just let the start date, you can either change it to September 8th or just let it default to whatever the start date is, which I think is August 1st. It's not a big deal because you're not going to start collecting data on it until September 8th. So whether you put September 8th or let it default to August 1st, it's not going to matter. But moving forward, whenever, if you were ending and starting a new plan in October, then of course the start date would be whatever the October date of the meeting is. Yeah, if you can't, like some of the Carleton kids, if they're tied to another campus, let me know, and I can tweak the rights so that you have access to the students if their home campus is not actually at Carleton. Okay, Raul, if your Review 360 looks a little bit different, some of your rights might need to be tweaked. I can take a look at that later. Just email me if you have any questions. If it still looks like that, we might need to change your rights from a gen ed teacher right to a special ed teacher. No, you want to put in the goals and the benchmarks. Some of the life skills teachers that have been using it might start a new plan every grading period, and that's okay, just like starting a new paper data collection. But yes, you would ultimately put everything in Review 360 to collect data at some point, whether it's all at once when you set up the plan initially, or if you want to go the route, especially with the benchmarks, and just doing it every 9 weeks. But again, you can, when you're in the scoring page for academics, you can always turn the current grading period data collection on and turn off the other grading periods that you're not collecting data on during that period. In the resources folder in y'all's group, there are 2 videos in there. One of them's the video simply about scoring. The paras are going to have access to that as well for their training. But again, y'all can all share it with them if you want as well. And the video about creating the plans in one of the videos also covers how to create a plan by importing from SuccessEd as well. So you can either rewatch this video recording or refer to those videos as well. The videos in the folder are a lot shorter than this, and you can just watch them over and over and over until it sinks in.
And this video will be there too. I am going to try to separate you and Dr. Mack's video and put them in 2 separate places. I make no promises, but I will work on that. But the video will be available either as a 2-hour video with transition and 360 or separate.
And please, y'all email me. If you're trying to look for a kid and the kid's not there, as kids are registering and Review 360 talks to eSchool, so sometimes those things are delayed. I'm not certain how the process is, working with how all of that information gets updated. But if you see that some kids are there that you're looking for and some of them aren't, or you see that they're unregistered, please let me know and I'll take a look at it. As always, I appreciate it when y'all email me and you send me a student ID number. That helps me out tremendously to find the student that I need, because I'm talking to everybody in the district, right? So it helps to have those student ID numbers. Yeah, that's another good comment. Let's say that you are resurrecting a plan that was previously in place, just like the data collection sheets. You want to make certain that they're the current ones. That's why, at this point, now that Review 360 talks to Success Ed, at the beginning of the year, it's almost easier in some instances, just create a new plan because it's good, it's the right one. As I said earlier, if you're bringing back a kid from last year and it's good, then yeah, go ahead and resurrect. But if you have any questions about it, just go ahead and create a new one. Yeah, so it's not exactly automatically sent over to Success Ed. Just you still have to go into Success Ed, click on the green plus sign to add a progress report statement. You still have to choose the grading period because it has to know what data set, what date range to pull from, right? And then you still have to, take a look at the program status and then import data. And of course, you can always hop back over into the progress statement and make edits or add more comments if you need to. So what the automatic part is just writing a sentence for you that says, at the end of the first grading period, the student is currently at 4.2 out of 5 mastery level, and then you could add comments to it. So that's how automatic it is, so to speak. So paras, if you have paras that need to have access to Review 360, please send me an email with them CC'd in the email, and then I can create accounts for them. And again, paras are only going to be able to score plans for whom you add them as a teacher, okay? So their rights are limited in Review 360. Again, please send me an email with them CC'd and I can create the accounts. Once the accounts are created, you can add them to the plan, and then whatever students that you add to them will also appear in the spotlight box, and they would be able to then go in and take data to whichever plans that they have been added. And as special ed rights, you can add let's say that your other teacher makes a plan, you can add yourself to their plan, but y'all are the only ones that can do that. Everybody else, paras and maybe any gen ed teachers that are there, they cannot add themselves to plans. Only y'all as case managers can add them to the plans. And, you know, another thing that, you know, I discovered last year with sending data back, you have to send, you know, it makes sense, I guess, from a code writing point of view. You have to send a goal to from Success Ed to Review 360 before you can send it from Review 360 back to Success Ed. That's a great question. Early on about the low incidence plan, the low incidence plan was initially kind of, I guess, a life skills thing, so to speak, but it was very similar to the orange plan. But the differences were like the goal bank. Well, this is Cypher ISD, right? We write our own goals. We don't care about anybody else's goal bank. So, but the scoring features of the orange plan or academic plan were pretty identical to the low incidence plan. So we've kind of quit using the low incidence plan. I see a couple of them out there every now and then, but if you're importing from Success Ed, the differences between the two don't really matter. But just to keep things uniform, anything that needs to be scored with yes, no, or trials is all placed into the orange plan. That's a great question, because that goes back years. Yes. So once you've created a plan, you can add the teachers that are specific. Well, it's not going to be specific to a goal or a course. They're just going to be specific to the plan. The orange plan and the blue plan are separate as far as adding teachers. But yes, if you add a teacher to the orange plan because they need to see the English goal, they will also see the math goal. Okay, if a goal says not configured, please send me that information. Please send me the student. I'll take a look at it. That happens from time to time when, for some reason, it might be because of some other issue back in Success Ed. Remember, sometimes the not configured stuff occurs because you have old progress reports sitting out there that interfere with the importation. I mean, a lot of times y'all will email me to get rid of stuff from 2016, right? Well, having old stuff sitting out there in the progress reports can interfere with trying to import the current goals. Sometimes not configured occurs because there might be a selection for the subject title that needs to be updated. So again, if you do get a not configured, please send that information to me and I'll take a look and see what I can figure out. Okay, so the question about deselecting goals, that's also a good one. That only works in the orange plan. The blue plan, everything you put in is going to show up all at once. That's why some people create and end blue plans every grading period. But for the orange plan, goals can always be deselected so that the only ones that appear on the scoring screen are the ones that you're currently working on. Yes, you will not be able to see your scholars until September 8th if that was the start date of the plan. About decimals, I do not know the answer to that question. I've never tried that, so I don't know if that would be an option or not. But I'm interested to play around with it and see if that's something that I can do. Let's see. Nope, that does not, it doesn't look like you would be able to create a trial as 3.5 out of 5.
Or why would there be a 3.5 out of 5?
I don't know.
I understand it may calculate out that way, but you would be putting in whole numbers. And then Review 360 would calculate it. It may come out as a, why would we ever put in a decimal, I guess is my question. No, okay,
I don't know.
Hold on. The reason for decimals is that some objectives are written as the average.
So that might be like a email or something.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, no,
You're saying the goal would be written, the goal would be to get 3.5 out of 5?
that's how I understood it. I mean, Review 360 will return a decimal point, 3.5 out of 5, but no, it doesn't look like as though you could enter, like right here on the screen, it does not look as though you could enter 3.5 out of 5.
Chloe, does that answer your question? That it could return that for you?
So yeah, a workaround might be to make this say 70 if it's actually 3.5. And then let's go to score it and see what would happen. Well, I've already been scoring on this plan, so it won't allow me to do that right now. But yeah, you could and another good thing that I want to point out is when you're creating the plans, it doesn't really matter what I mean, granted, you want to put it in so it's not confusing. It doesn't really matter what you set the mastery level at. It crunches the number. It's not going to change what you get when you have a summary report. So whether I make this right here, say 40%, or even 2 out of 5, it doesn't matter. Whenever you go to run a summary report, this number right here is going to be, this 60% is going to be the exact same, okay? So that part doesn't really matter.
All right, Charles, I don't want to take away a minute of their lunch. So guys, if y'all have any other questions, email your coaches and coordinators, and of course, Charles, and look at that folder in our resource group. We appreciate you, Charles.
All right, again, please email me this, Success Ed, whatever,
yes.
We'll figure it
Any
out.
questions y'all have? Thank you so much. Y'all have a good lunch. And if you have questions, office hours start around 12:30. Bye.